Galils, Uzis, Tavors. If there's one thing Israel does right, it's weapons, and this gun is most certainly no exception. What's up, guys? Skippy Africanus here, and today we're going to be going over the Sakin Mg38 from Modern Warfare 2, or as it's known in real life, the IWI Negev NG-7. This light machine gun specifically began production in around 2012, however this was not the first gun in the Negev family, with the 5.56 variants being produced well before this one. However, in game, the gun uses the 7.62x51mm cartridge as opposed to the 5.56x45, so we'll more focus on the NG-7 as opposed to the earlier 5.56 variants. Which I will add is kinda a shame because while both guns are incredibly similar, the 5.56 variant has a really cool ability to be able to use standard box magazines should standard belts ever run dry. And unlike other guns with a similar capability like the SAW, it has zero issues in doing so, which it accomplishes in a very, very cool way. However, as mentioned, we will not be going too much into that feature as it doesn't exist on the NG-7. So what exactly is the IWI Negev NG-7? Why does it exist? How does it work? Who actually uses it? And what makes this general purpose machine gun an absolute king of its class? Let's get into it. The NG-7, as mentioned, began production around 2012 and is produced by IWI, or Israeli Weapons Industry. It features a high range of modularity, such as different barrel lengths, as well as a whole bunch of small perks that really add up to make this gun as great as it is. It was developed specifically to increase range, as though 5.56 is a great cartridge, for something like machine guns, a more potent cartridge tends to be a lot more helpful further out. This is why plenty of other countries tend to have similar support weapons in these heavier calibers. Overall, the gun is not that much heavier than the 5.56 counterpart, though, really only weighing in at around a pound more. And add to that, despite the very light weight, they handle the recoil of the 7.62 NATO cartridge quite well. The gun itself operates with an open bolt, as tends to be the case with light machine guns. Essentially, as the bolt is racked rearward, it is retained in this rearward position. When the trigger is pulled, it essentially just pulls down on a bar that is holding the bolt rearward, and as that bar drops, the bolt goes forward, strips around off the belt, the bolt head here will rotate and lock up the system, and at full travel forwards, a firing pin protrudes out just enough to strike the primer. After which, of course, the cartridge is detonated, and as the bullet is fired, some gas vents through a little hole pushing this piece right here, which in turn goes rearward, unlocking the bolt as it goes. And once the bolt head is fully rotated, the entire bolt is allowed to move rearwards. The gun will continue to do this until, of course, the trigger is released, which allows the bar to go back up and catch the bolt. Now, one of the many neat features with this gun is, unlike in-game, there is actually a semi-automatic option in the real-life variant, which, if that sounds kind of weird on a light machine gun, it's actually a pretty damn useful tool for things specifically like zeroing the optic. But anyways, the way that portion works is the bolt simply trips this piece, which automatically forces that bar back up, so as the bolt moves rearward, it cannot continue firing until the trigger is released and then pulled again. All in all, a very simple process. Now, that being said, I mentioned that this gun has a bunch of very small little perks going for it that really make it such a great gun, and one of those perks has to do with the bolt itself. So a common issue with open bolt guns is, what if you rack the bolt rearwards just enough to clear around, but not enough to actually lock the bolt in place? With no safety precautions in place, this would result in a negligent discharge, but luckily, the Negev has got that covered. The gun has a series of ratchets at different positions, meaning if you were to pull the bolt back rearward just enough to feed a cartridge and then accidentally drop it, rather than going forward and detonating that cartridge, it would actually end up getting caught so as to prevent that negligent discharge. You are only going to fire this gun with the trigger pulled. Another neat safety feature that also ties into another cool feature has to do with how this gun actually does a barrel change. In order to remove the barrel, the feed tray cover has to be lifted, essentially making the gun inoperable until it's been closed. Add to that, the barrel itself is actually super easy to remove, and with only one hand needed. All that must be done is push down on the buttons on the side and the barrel pulls right out. The bolt being closed or open doesn't actually matter in regards to doing this. Going more into the Negev, and you'll notice that it has a very small feed cover as opposed to many other designs where it essentially goes all the way to the rear of the receiver. This was done in order to provide a more secure way to mount optics, as the more stable your mounting surface, the less likely you are to lose zero, so slamming that feed tray cover down won't make you lose any sleep over whether or not your gun is still zeroed. Much like how you won't be losing sleep over your gun getting a little bit dirty. Because on top of having numerous dust covers in place to keep the internals clean, this thing also features an adjustable gas port. Now on this gun in particular, there are only two settings, normal and adverse, essentially meaning that should your gun start to dirty itself up, you can flip it to the adverse setting to allow a little more gas into the system system to give that bolt carrier a little extra push. It should be noted that on the 5.56 variants, there is actually a third setting specifically for magazine. Now, I mentioned we wouldn't get super into this, but I really can't help myself. But, you know, this doesn't apply to the MG-7. It applies to the 5.56 variants, but I just think this is a very cool system. So as mentioned, they have a third gas setting for magazines, and this is in place due to the fact that without the energy being spent on stripping a round off a belt, the bolt would end up moving a little too fast to where the magazine couldn't feed the gun fast enough to where you have to really have a way to slow the bolt down. As mentioned, this is of course only on the 5.56 variant. I just really couldn't help myself because I find the little system pretty cool. Now, this feature is not the only thing that separates the 5.56 and 7.62 NATO variant, however, as on the NG-7 variant, it also features a buffer system with the stock, meaning that while you can have a folding stock on the 5.56 variant, you cannot have one on the 7.62 NATO variant. Now, the Negev features plenty of other small little helpful bits aside from what we've gone over so far, and we could really go on and on in regards to them. However, let's get into who actually uses these and see if all these features really stack up in the end. Now, it should be no surprise that Israel, of course, uses the NG-7 as well as the other Negev variants. They adopted the NG-7 in 2012 and have continued using them since. They, however, are not the only user, with a few other countries also following suit. Now, do note that not all of these countries listed are specifically using the 7.62 NATO variant. However, it does go to show you that it is most certainly a solid weapons platform. I mean, Israel does have a track record with designing some genuinely god-tier guns, so it really comes as no surprise. Just like it should also come as no surprise that overall this gun features an overwhelmingly positive rating when it comes to soldiers who actually get to use them. Like, they have relatively zero complaints in regards to the platforms in all areas, from recoil, user friendliness, weight, you name it, and anyone who uses these guns will tell you just how great they are. Speaking specifically on the NG-7, but it most certainly applies to the other 5.56 variants as well. But anyways, I think that is going to do it for this short little video on the Sakin Mg38 from Modern Warfare 2, or as it's known in real life, the IWI Negev NG-7. I hope y'all enjoyed the video as much as I personally enjoyed making it, and I will see y'all in the next Guns of Modern Warfare 2 in real life video.